Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Smosna. I'm a dietitian with Baylor, Scott & White, and today we're going to talk about Nutrition 101 in partnership with Sparrow Living. So I chose this topic. I think it's really important to just build a foundation when it comes to overall health, and we hear so many mixed messages about what's healthy, what isn't, what we should avoid, what we should incorporate, and so I'm hoping that this presentation today can give you some more confidence when it comes to balancing your meals and snacks and helping overall health, reducing fat storage, and reducing inflammation, as well as disease state. So something to really keep in mind is that our food choices impact a lot, right? Food is more than calories, it's information. So it's going to affect our energy and our mental clarity, right? If we feel foggy brain, we're not going to be very efficient at, going about our daily tasks or even in having a conversation with individuals. We might feel lost for our words. It definitely impacts our motivation and productivity, which can be a vicious cycle as well with, energy levels, because we might not have the motivation to work out or motivation to be active. And then we know that that's what's going to increase our energy. And so, without doing one or the other, it can have a pretty profound effect, but food can also play a big role in that too. And certainly our mood, our sleep quality, our body's ability to manage stress. So there's a lot of increased health risks associated with poor choices. And many of the disease states that we hear of that are so common in today's society are lifestyle diseases, and our food can play a huge role in the ability to prevent or even reverse some of these disease states. So we want to make sure that you're eating a nutrient-dense, balanced diet. And so today we're going to talk about what that means when I say balanced. And so we will cover kind of what the ideal meal looks like, how to find balance, and some meal formulation guidance, which is a handout that I use for most of my patients and clients, and one that I hope that you will be able to either copy or reach out on Facebook, and I can post a copy of that handout for you. So when we look at, oh, my screen is frozen. Let me go back. Sorry, it was going along just fine. So the ideal meal, when we're looking at our plate, this is kind of what you want your plate to look like. Half of your plate being non-starchy vegetables, which again, that meal formulation guide that I mentioned in regards to that handout will provide you with a list of what those foods are, and we'll get to that later on in the presentation. But we have half of your plate non-starchy vegetables, quarter of plate protein, and quarter of your plate fiber-rich carbohydrates. So it's an easier way to look at it too if you're thinking, palm size and thickness of protein, about a fist of carbohydrates, and then, as much of you as you want of the non-starchy vegetables, and trying to get a rainbow of color in. So I know, I joke with my husband that if we have, say, cauliflower, potatoes, and chicken, our plate is very bland. And so we try to see how many colors we can incorporate in, so that we're not eating just like blah foods. Even though those are really nutrient-dense foods, the colors are where we're going to have a lot of those antioxidants that help with disease prevention. We also want to make sure that we're incorporating quality fats. So that's one that we hear a lot about. And for years we were told, fat is bad. We need to get as little calories as we want, especially if we're supporting weight loss or, avoiding that fat because it's going to lead to fat gain on our body, which is not the case. I am a huge proponent of good, better, best spectrum. And so certainly there are foods, or there are fats and foods that are going to be good, and then they're going to be better and best. So for example, if we were looking at a fat, we could look at good being like a margarine. Better would be a butter spread, and best would be just a stick of butter that has cream and salt, or you could do unsalted, but where it's just a one ingredient item. One of my rules of thumb is if you can't recognize or pronounce the ingredients, don't expect your body to. Because again, food is information, it's not just calories. So we want to make sure that we're giving strong, healthy messages to our body. Another way I like to think of that is the garbage versus the garbage men. So if you consume garbage, which you're human, I'm human, we're all going to consume foods that are less than ideal at times, but knowing that, okay, that's adding to kind of the landfill in our body and it's slowing down our body's processes, and therefore it's not promoting optimal health. So we want to aim to bring in the garbage men, which would be things like those best foods, which again will be in that meal formulation chart we'll get to in a little bit. And that's what's going to help to kind of clear up any of the gunk or the garbage in your body and help for things to run smoothly and help with disease prevention, help with brain and cognition, mental clarity, all those things that we looked at on that first slide in how food can impact our health. So making sure that we're having that balance, and then always trying to incorporate some water, not necessarily with your meals, it could be between your meals, but it is a huge component to make sure we're staying hydrated. And using your urine as an indicator of that is usually the best way to go about that. So looking for pale yellow to clear urine. And so when we're looking at blood sugar control, this is what I would view as the foundation. So, and I'm sorry, it looks like it didn't, the slide didn't necessarily end up how I wanted it to look. So it might be a little mumbo jumbo, but when we're thinking about blood sugar control, I like to think about it as this jar and lid analogy. So I think about carbohydrates as a jar. If we eat carbohydrates on their own, our blood sugar spikes. So that's what we see on this first part of the slide. We have carbohydrate consumption. When we consume carbs, that turns into sugar. So S is going to equal sugar here. So we end up with these sugars in the blood. In response to sugar, our body puts out insulin. So I have one eye with every sugar molecule. And what insulin does is it serves as the key. So it's going to come and unlock this door on the cell. And once that door is open, sugar can enter into the cell to create energy. When we do that, that's ideal. But notice that there's only 1, 2, 3, 4 doors on this cell, meaning that we have room for 4 of these sugar molecules, which are really these 4 up here that we're supposed to be in the circles. And so that insulin comes and unlocks each of these doors and brings in those 4 sugar molecules, each insulin bringing in 1 sugar. But then there's this excess sugar and insulin floating around in the blood. And insulin is a growth hormone that triggers fat storage, specifically around our abdominal area. That fat is biologically active, meaning that it's constantly sending off these inflammatory messages to the rest of our body. And that inflammation is the root cause of almost all disease states. What inflammation does is it's like your cell being on fire. So that's where you see these more squiggly lines here. And that's because that door or that receptor site is inflamed. So now insulin, being the key, comes to unlock the door, but the lock has changed shapes and therefore it no longer fits. So the cell says, sorry, you no longer fit, pushes it back into the blood. We end up with even more sugar and insulin in the blood, leading to more fat, more inflammation, and it's a vicious cycle. And that actually leads to an increase in cholesterol, which leads to an increase in blood pressure. And so what we want to do is figure out, how do we stop this cascade? And that's where we look at that jar and lid analogy. So again, when we consume carbs, thinking of them as a jar. If we have an open jar and we were to put vapor gas in it and there's no lid, that gas is going to escape. So if we eat carbohydrates on their own, we see this cascade that occurs. We want to prevent that by putting a lid on the jar. That lid is protein and or quality fat, which are going to seal the deal, slowing down digestion and absorption. So your blood sugar is more like speed bumps as opposed to mountains and valleys. And therefore, we're reducing this fat storage, reducing inflammation, and really putting an end to this vicious cycle. And so the last component of that jar and lid is what I call the ribbon, and that's going to be your vegetables. And the vegetables are going to add lots of fiber for digestive health. They're also going to help to slow down digestion and absorption, and they're going to offer a lot of antioxidants, which help with prevention of disease, decreasing the hardening of our arteries, and many other beneficial components. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to my next slide and it's just not wanting to go. Let me see what I can do here. If I click on it. go. Sorry, I'm just gonna go into the slide manually to this one. I'll try sharing this one in print mode again. If it doesn't allow me to keep going to the next slide, I'll just go back into that other mode. So why does inflammation matter, right? Again, inflammation is known to be the root cause of almost all disease states. So short-term inflammation can be helpful. It helps us to heal. But when it's, short-term for even longer than, a few days or a week or whatnot, it can affect our skin, our bones, our gut health, our oral health, which is very much tied to our heart health. It can absolutely affect your sleep quality, which sleep is our foundation. That's how we heal and repair our body and how we clean up our brain from any of that like gunk every night. It can make it hard to breathe. And then inflammation long-term is where we have a lot of those disease states. So we absolutely want to reduce inflammation as well as fat storage because we want to make sure that we're supporting a healthy body composition. So when I talk about that jar and lid analogy, here's what it should look like. The carbs as our jar, our lid as our protein and our healthy fats, and then our non-starchy vegetables as our ribbon. So for example, here is the meal formulation chart. So the way that I like to describe it is you take one from each column, right? So you have a protein. Let's say we're putting together a dinner meal. So maybe I choose that I want my protein to be some ground turkey, right? And it could be light or dark meat. And I'm going to do ground turkey with avocado. So I'm going to make maybe some tacos. I'm going to do my turkey as my protein, avocado as my quality fat. I might also add some olives on there. I'm a fan of olives. If you aren't, then by all means, avoid them. And this, again, is ideal. So if there's foods on here that you already avoid or that you don't like, then it doesn't mean you have to incorporate them. But I ask that everyone is always open to trying things just because our taste buds do adjust. And sometimes we end up liking something that we thought we didn't. So we have a protein, a fat, my carbohydrate. I'm probably going to do a taco bowl. So I think I'm going to do some organic corn and maybe some black beans. So that would fall into this legumes and lentils category. And then in regards to vegetables, I'm probably going to do some bell peppers and onion. And so now I have one from each column, at least one from each column, and I have a balanced meal. Let's say I wanted to do a snack. So, especially being summer, watermelon is in season and it's delicious. And so I might grab some watermelon, but that's where we want to use caution because these carbohydrates are that open jar. So you never want to consume naked carbs, meaning that you never want carbohydrates on their own. So you can have protein on its own. You can have fat on its own. They're lids. They're going to hold everything down. You can have non-starchy vegetables on their own because they're the ribbon. They're just adding nutrients and fiber, and they're very low carb. It's these carbohydrates, though, that you always want to balance. So if I'm going to have some watermelon, most likely I'm going to have it maybe in a smoothie even, or if I have it as just a snack to munch on, maybe I'll have some nuts within a half an hour. And that's the thing. You really want to try to have this balance within 30 minutes. Or perhaps I'll have it with my meal, and at my meal I choose to have minimal carbs. So let's say I want to have the watermelon at breakfast, and so I choose to do some eggs for breakfast, cooked in maybe some avocado oil, which is going to be a good oil for high heat cooking. Olive oil, you really don't want to use it past 325 to 350 degrees. At that point, it reaches its smoke point and it can begin to denature the fat and make it more pro-inflammatory. So aiming for more of an avocado oil or even a ghee or butter for the cooking. And I might have, a slice of some good quality bacon in there. So now I have protein, fat. I'm going to bypass the carbs because I'm going to save my carbohydrates for my watermelon or my fruit. And then vegetables, I'm probably going to throw a handful of some greens in there, whether it be spinach or power greens or baby kale, and maybe some mushrooms and, garlic, Italian seasoning, any of those to add additional health benefits. So again, I'm keeping within this balance and choosing one from each column. let's say, for example, I'm putting together a smoothie. A lot of times smoothies are very high in carbohydrates because of the fruit content. And I know a lot of individuals will use fruit juice in addition for their liquid. I personally am not a huge proponent of juice just because it is like lighter fluid to our blood sugar. And same with any soda. They don't offer soda doesn't really offer any nutrients of value. And juice, although it can offer vitamins, we're missing out on a lot of the components from actually eating the whole fruit and getting the fiber and other components that are in the skin or the rind. So I personally would probably choose protein-wise, either like a rice protein powder or hemp hearts are a great source of protein. 3 tablespoons is going to be 10 grams of protein and also offer a lot of beneficial quality fats. And so my go-to is generally going to be a rice protein powder or collagen peptides. Collagen peptides are, collagen is the glue in our body, so it helps to really support gut health, bones and joints, hair, skin, and nails. And our collagen production, our natural collagen production begins to decrease in our early 20s. So as we get older, we definitely want to make sure that we're consuming foods that are going to provide that collagen. And being that we no longer eat from snout to tail when it comes to animal products, we don't consume much collagen-rich foods, and therefore the collagen peptides can be an easy protein option. You can get ones, and I recommend getting the ones that are plain in flavor. They don't leave a gritty aftertaste. They mix into hot or cold liquids, so a lot of individuals will mix them in their coffee or their tea. I've been known to mix it even into like oatmeal or guacamole, things like that. Oatmeal is great because then you get some protein to balance out your carbs from the oats. But so let's say with a smoothie, we're going to use the collagen as our protein. So I'm going to do 2 scoops of collagen. In regards to my healthy fats, I am a huge proponent of putting in ground flax and chia seeds. And I will often also add like a spoonful of maybe almond butter. So definitely adding in a good heaping tablespoon of flax seeds for digestive health, but also flaxseed is a great source of soluble fiber, which is going to grab onto excess cholesterol in the blood and excrete it. And so that's going to help to support the reduction of inflammation and help to improve our lab values and reduce disease states. So we have our proteins, collagen, our fats from the flax, the chia, and maybe some almond butter. Carbohydrates. I love adding a banana. I like the taste of the banana with the almond or peanut butter. I think it's delicious, and it reminds me kind of more of a like dessert type thing, but all whole foods. And then I don't typically add additional fruit if I'm doing the banana, just because it does tend to have more carbs. I recommend doing like a small banana. If you want to do banana and say blueberries or peach, something like that, maybe just do half of each. And then vegetables, I always add in a handful of greens, especially when you have banana or a nut butter in there. It really covers the taste if you are somebody who notices those that flavor change. And so I will change it up. One week I might have spinach, the next week I might have the power greens, the next week it might be the baby kale. I don't recommend doing the curly kale just because it's hard to break down and it will definitely change the flavor. And so that is adding additional benefits and colors. And then I like to add a fresh piece of ginger and a fresh piece of turmeric root. And those are both going to be anti-inflammatory. So again, main goal of reducing inflammation and balancing blood sugar to support overall health. And then I also will typically add like a dash of cinnamon, and I do an unsweetened almond milk or an unsweetened cashew milk. You could also do water, but again, refraining from using juice, being that it's more like lighter fluid to the blood sugar. So again, that smoothie is going to have a protein from the collagen, the fats from the flax, the chia, and the nut butter, and then carbs from the banana, vegetables from the greens, and additional nutrients from both the ginger root, the turmeric root, and the cinnamon. And then using liquid with the unsweetened nut milk. And nut milks are great, just want to make sure that it's unsweetened, otherwise you're adding lighter fluid to your blood sugar just like the juice would. So using this kind of as a guide to just pick one from each column. If you want to avoid the carbohydrate, you absolutely can, but you never want to eat carbohydrates on their own. So if you want to just have a protein, fat, and a veggie as well as added nutrients, that's totally fine. But anytime you have something from this column of the carbs, you want to make sure you're pairing it with a protein or a quality fat to balance that out. So again, the ideal meal, we want to make sure that we're having that quality protein. And again, those were some of the protein sources on that chart, and having our palm size and thickness, fiber-rich carbs. So using those foods that are on that chart, those are the ideal and the most anti-inflammatory, in my opinion. The fiber-rich carb being about your fist size, and then your non-starchy vegetables filling about half of the plate or the remaining portion. And then getting that quality fat in there. That fat is also going to help to absorb a lot of the nutrients that are in the meal, and then making sure that you're hydrating throughout the day. Ideally not having more than 12 ounces of fluid with your meal, just because that can potentially dilute your digestive enzymes and decrease your body's ability to absorb the nutrients. It can also lead to more reflux or belching, flatulence. And so just being mindful of having water, before, after, and no more than 12 ounces during. And here are some reasons why we want to stay hydrated. And I always think about it as you want your cells to be like grapes as opposed to raisins. So everything that's going on in our body is a result of cell-to-cell communication. And if you want your cells to function at that optimal level, again, we want them like grapes, so all of our hormones can dock in our cells, as opposed to being like raisins and kind of more like that game of telephone where you whisper in each other's ear and the message is totally different at the end. That can happen in your body, where then we end up with these imbalances that lead to poor outcomes in regards to our health. And so certainly if you're not somebody who really enjoys water, you can incorporate things like herbal tea, decaf coffee. Sparkling water is a good option. However, I advise you caution with that one, just because I find that a lot of individuals don't actually get hydrated from the sparkling water. So again, using your urine as an indicator and making sure that your urine is in fact staying pale yellow to clear. So kind of summarizing everything, our body needs that balanced fuel for optimal health. So we want to make sure that we're having a good variety when it comes to the foods, but that we're balancing things. So that jar and lid analogy is what I really want you to take away today. And then the key of reducing inflammation through eating whole, real foods and recognizing that food is information, not just calories. And so sticking to items where minimal ingredients listed and ingredients which you can recognize and pronounce. And so we want to make sure that we're getting, as much of that variety in throughout our foods too, and rotating our foods for different nutrients. Absolutely, it's okay to have the same meal every day, but say you even do a snack that has an apple with nuts, change up the type of apple, change up the type of nuts, and that's going to help to get you more nutrient diversity. And then making sure that you're having adequate water as well. So in regards to the program that I've run, Baylor Scott & White does accept most insurance providers. And so there are, right now I'm doing virtual as well as in-person appointments, and that could be phone, video, or in person, and located in like the Westlake area. And so these are the insurance codes to see if you do have coverage. So if it's something that you're interested in exploring further and seeing, what are some individualized goals that you can focus on, or how you can improve your quality of your food intake, as well as looking at stress, sleep, movement, water consumption, all of that. If there's supplements to review, I'm more than happy to work with you on an individual basis. And these are the codes that you would call your insurance provider and just say, are there what is my coverage for these codes? And they can provide you with that guidance. And then you can always reach out to me. My email, I'm going to go to the next slide. My email here is jessica.smosna@bswhealth.org, or there's my direct phone number. And so you're more than welcome to reach out, and I can always provide you with additional information. But the first step would definitely be calling your insurance provider to see what your coverage is. And so it looks like we do have a couple questions. Is unsweetened nut milk better to drink than 2%? Personally speaking, I would say yes. And that's because when it comes to dairy, I generally recommend either fat-free or full fat. I view 1% or 2% as them taking out the fat, denaturing it, and throwing it back in. And therefore, it's more processed. And I'm very much a proponent of the less processed, the better. And so if you wanted to even like make your own 2%, if you go through a lot of milk, that's realistic, buy a fat-free and a whole milk and make it yourself. Or if you're not doing a ton of milk, then maybe going for a whole milk. I will say if you're going to do full fat, trying to do organic is going to be better just because there are a lot of hormones in the dairy products and fat holds on to toxins. And so if we're trying to balance out, that inflammatory level, then the organic could be better. But otherwise, a good option is doing the unsweetened nut milk. And like I said, I really like the unsweetened cashew. I find that it's nice and creamy. As opposed to unsweetened almond milk can be a little watery, and you can absolutely do like a vanilla or chocolate flavor of the unsweetened options too. In regards to getting a copy of the meal formulation chart, I think I'm able to upload it onto the Facebook Live in regards to kind of in the comment section. If I cannot, then please email me and I can send you a copy of the PDF of that. So I don't think we have any other questions. If anything comes up, feel free to email me directly. But otherwise, I hope that you remember the jar and lid analogy so that you can balance out your meals and snacks and help to reduce inflammation in your body and help to improve your overall health. And I wish you all a happy and healthy afternoon. Thank you very much.